is a prayer. Explanation. You don't understand that I rise early before all sleepers rise, to touch nothing but the silence that unfolds moment by moment, as one would lay out preparations of butter and eggs before the magic of a newly baked cake. You don't understand how love needs the bliss of solitude, moment by moment, so I might turn to your smiling face after a gathering of peace and join you in the world. Every day, I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It was what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself. One summer, when I was teaching 4th grade, awaiting the onslaught of a new year, I was given the heads up that one of my students, Bruce, had the habit of refusing to remain in his seat, but would only work from under his desk. I was forewarned that nothing worked to get him to remain seated. So, good luck. Laughing it off as just another eccentricity that comes with a room full of 10-year-olds, I moved it to the back of my mind. The first busy day of school arrived that September. The room was awash with the usual jovial vying for seats and thumping of fresh tablets and happy faces. After introductions and get-to-know-you rituals, our first class began. As we opened our books, I caught the movement of a student to my right. He had slid down in his seat until only his head appeared over the desktop. After my assignment was delivered, I glanced to my right and saw that he had disappeared. "Where's Bruce?" I asked. The class burst with laughter. He had slipped down completely with pencil and paper and was settled cross-legged between the 4 legs of his desk. "That's where he sits," my students shouted. "Okay, I see," I said, and the lesson continued. For the next month, when I made my rounds of the students, Bruce and I would huddle beneath his desk, correcting numbers, forming letters, and checking spelling. Occasionally, his whole form would appear to sharpen a pencil, or his hand might go up between the chair and the desk to answer a question. From time to time, his head would appear. One October day, while working on a science experiment, Bruce gathered his equipment from the floor and placed it on his desk. We saw more of him after that. Bruce did not come from a home of affluence and calm. The neighborhood he lived in was a rough and tumbled one. Many of my students were on their own in the evening hours, finding their ways as best they could, but from somewhere they had learned to respect Bruce and his choice to remain apart from them. I knew Bruce wished to isolate himself, not in defiance of the code of conduct of a classroom. I didn't fear his unusual location spreading to the rest of the students, leaving me, the teacher, the only visible one in the room. It was his need that I hoped was not permanent. I hope to respect the need as I had been respected as a child, engulfed in reading so much that my mother had to personally deliver a call to dinner after her fourth announcement from the kitchen went unheeded. We are encouraged to respect the worth and dignity of every person. Does this philosophy apply to all 26 of my students when they come to a classroom with such varied baggage and are unable to articulate it in the face of many demands placed upon them? I can only hope so. I was happy to be able to honor what I saw as a statement one student was able to articulate about the world around him. Though why Bruce found his personal cave so enticing, only he will know. The need was there to control his environment until he could feel safe in joining the world. It worked for him. Had I made demands on him as those before me had done, our conflict may have endured throughout the year, and we might have both felt a sense of loss by the year's end. The next year, when I visited Bruce's 5th grade class, he was totally engaged in creating a project for the science fair on speed and acceleration. His desk was being used as a launching pad for a series of little cars being clocked as they sped down the track. No mention was made of where he would sit when the experiment was done. People have traveled to Tibet to find a cave to sit in for months or years when the world seemed too much for them. Mothers have locked themselves in bathrooms for a few moments' respite from a full family life. And cats have crept under beds where no amount of treats or toys could coax them out. The poet David Whyte says, "To be alone for any length of time is to shed the outer skin. The body is inhabited in a different way when we are alone than when we are with others." The other day, I drove out to Herring Cove. I parked my car by one of those long Moby mats that gives access to the beach. It was cold, and a bit of willpower was needed to make the long walk to the sand. I stood on the beach in the wind, watching the boats, looking for birds, as the tide closed in on broken shells and smooth stones strewn on the beach. It was there I saw a clam sitting atop a mound of seaweed. Of course I picked it up for a closer look. As I lifted it off its stand of green, I felt it move slightly in my hand. I touched its slotted opening and it clammed up, leaving only a fine line along its edge. Since I am not Mary Oliver, I did not find myself addressing this clam. But having the sense of where it might be happier, I tossed it as best I could so it could return to its safer community under the sea. Walking back up the Moby mat, I experienced clearness I hadn't felt when I arrived. It made my day. Just being who I was, uncomplicated with my own thoughts, for as little as 10 minutes, made life very beautiful and very doable. That is all I really wanted. White says that taking time to be alone is the slow knitting together of the inner life. For me, if I were 10, I doubt that I would look at my time under a desk as providing answers to life's questions. But aware or not, the sorting out does go on. When we allow ourselves to work on our lives in a way that harms no one and gives them a sense of control and respect, we are co-conspirators in the growth and the place and people's place in the world. We let them be themselves. In a self-imposed solitude, we may choose to hum a song. We may pick lint off our sleeves. We may walk the beaches in an endless search for the perfect stone. Or we may create something wonderful in our special quiet space that amazes even us. These are all worthwhile endeavors to distance ourselves from the world's confusion. And in that distancing, we allow part of our hidden selves to emerge, even if for only to us. We give ourselves the present of turning our backs on the cacophony of living, if even for a few moments, an hour, or even a day. White says, "For a solitary life to flourish, even if it is for a few precious hours, aloneness asks us to make a friend of silence, and just as importantly, to inhabit that silence in our own particular way, to find our very own way into our own particular and even virtuoso way of being alone." I say, when your respite is complete, you may willingly join the rest of us with the freshness that comes from knowing who you are and what your dance in the world can be. Take the courage to find a quiet space of your own when the world becomes too much, where you can hear your mind and feel your soul. Scientists have found that solitude encourages parasympathetic nervous systems, causing the muscles to relax, your heart rate to slow down, and your blood pressure to decrease. Just an hour of silence relieves stress and helps us work through internal issues, and some say might even regenerate brain cells. It encourages creativity and gives us a leg up on preventing burnout. Not to be confused with loneliness, solitude is a choice, not a feeling. On the other hand, if you watched last week's Oscars, you saw that Carol Dysinger won an award for her short film about girls in Afghanistan called "Learning to Skate in a War Zone If You Are a Girl." She emphasized the importance of being able to raise your hand and say, "I am here and I have something to say." I think after choosing some time alone, you may feel that you wish to greet life with all its pushing and pulling, and you see the world tempting you to join in, do what 10-year-old Bruce did. Tell yourself it's time to raise your hand because I am here and I have something to say. Someone will call on you, and that's another story. Thank you.